In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to divide decimals. So we're going to start off with a more simple example and then work our way up. And I'm going to explain how this works. So let's look at 1.2. And we want to divide that by 0.3. Now there are several ways I can show you how to do this, but I'm going to go in a way that deals with fractions because it will help us understand some other mathematical concepts. So my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this division sentence into a fraction. So I'm going to have 1.2 and I'm going to divide it by 0.3. Okay, so there it's rewritten as a fraction. Now next thing I'm going to do is, we don't like decimals, so I'm going to make sure my denominator has no decimals in it. So I'm going to multiply my denominator by 10 in order to move the decimal over once. That must mean I must multiply my numerator by 10 to keep my proportions the same. That's the reason why I put it as a fraction, to know that we have to keep the proportions the same. So this is going to end up giving me 12 divided by 3. Now 12 divided by 3, we all know that that is pretty simple. That is going to be equal to, for my answer, it's going to be equal to 4. Okay? Now let's take a look at a second question here. My next question, we're going to look at negative 31.5, and I'm going to divide that by 0.15. Okay? So I have here my question. So the first step again that I am going to do is I am going to put this into a fraction. So I'm going to first put this into a fraction. So that's going to give me 31.5, and we're going to have that over 0.15. Now I look at this. Once again, I do not want my denominator to be a decimal. I want it to be a whole number. So in this case, I'm going to times it by 10 twice, or times it by 100. By timesing both by 100, I'm moving the decimal places over twice, and here I'm moving the decimal place over twice as well. So I'm going to end up getting 3,150 divided by 15. Okay? Now let's just do our quick division of that. So I'm going to have 3,150, and we want to divide that by 15. So 15 goes into 3 0 times. 15 goes into 30 twice. Okay, then we do our subtraction. 15 goes into 15 once. So I'm going to put the 1 over the 5. And we have 15. We subtract and we get 0. Carry down this 0. And 15 goes into 0 0 times. So my answer for this is equal to negative 210. Because a negative divided by a positive is a negative. Okay? Let's try another one. Let's try this one here. For this one, I'm going to have 0.216 divided by negative 0.12. Alright? So first step again is we are going to put it as a fraction. So I'm going to have 0.216, and that's going to be over negative 0.12. Now, once again, I don't want my denominator to have a decimal. It's okay if my numerator does in this case. I know in real fractions you want them both to not have a decimal. But here, I just don't want my denominator to have a decimal. So I'm going to multiply this by 100, or by 10 twice, to move the decimal over twice. So I'm moving the decimal over twice on the top as well. So timesing by 100, or timesing by 10 twice. Okay? So that's going to end up giving me 21.6 over 12. Alright? Now we're just going to do our long division one more time. So I'm going to have 21.6, and we want to divide that by 12. It's always good to practice our long division. 12 goes into 2 0 times. I'm going to put the 0 there. 12 goes into 21 once. Okay? We subtract. I'm going to get 9, and then we carry down the 6. 12 goes into 96, a total of 8 times. Now, look where my decimal is. It's right there. So I have to put my decimal lined up exactly where the decimal should be. So my answer is, and this is going to be negative, it's going to be equal to negative 1.8 is my answer. All right? Let's try my very last example. This one here, I'm going to have negative 33, and I want to divide it by negative 0.011. Okay? First step again, we're going to put it into fraction form. So we have negative 33, and that's going to be all over negative 0.011. All right? Next step is get rid of the fractions on the denominator. So by doing that, I must do the same to the numerator as I do to the denominator, because we have to keep the proportions due to being fractions. So I'm moving the decimal over 3 times, or times in this case by 1,000. And here I'm moving the decimal over once, twice, 3 times. And there's imaginary zeros there, right? There's an imaginary decimal, and we move into those zeros. So I'm going to end up getting negative all over negative 11. Okay? So here, we're just going to do our long division again. I have, that's a negative. So we're going to have 11 goes into 3 0 times. 11 goes into 33 3 times. 3 times 11 is negative 33. So I'm going to end up getting a 0. Then we bring down the 0. We have a 0. Bring down another 0. 0. Bring down the last 0. 0. So my answer for this is going to be 3,000. And since they're both negative, my answer is going to be positive. So that is essentially how we divide decimals.